us hear some comments from the panel here first, and then if you have questions or comments, you're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she has very nicely shed light on Iqbal's concept of inner self. Iqbal does not mean, that we should renounce this world. He says, that this world has to be conquered. And when one develops love for Allah, he goes beyond this one, beyond the time and space. So it is very important for that, that he goes beyond the time and space. This is why he says, that this is only the ishq. Ishq, it has not got the limited meaning. Ishq means, that you have devotion, commitment for some object or purpose of life, you see, and you pursue it with struggle. You always make efforts to achieve it. Now, Iqbal's concept of love, it means, that this word man and tan, there are two words, this physical word and the other metaphysical word. He says, that so far as the knowledge of this physical word is concerned, we can achieve it. We can achieve it with the help of reason and intellect. But he says, that intellect does not provide us the solution of all our problems. Because, he calls it, that a lamp on the way. He says, guzar ja aql se aage ke ye noor, chirage raah hai manzil nahi hai. He says, that human intellect is just like a lamp on the way. It can give us light to some extent, but it cannot, that take us to the destination. So then we need, that ishq. Now, ishq used in a wider sense, it means, ilham or wahi or inspiration, means, that goes beyond this world. So there are certain facts of life which are known to us when we study this universe. And there are other facts, more important, they lie beyond this world of matter. And those, they can be known only with the help of love. Ishq. Ishq means, that if you love Allah, if you love Him properly, if you that follow His commandments truly and sincerely, naturally God will love you as well. And as a result of His love, He will give you this insight into the facts. And then many things, will dawn upon your heart. So heart, Iqbal says, is also very important. So this is the one, if you make it alive, if you keep it alive, and then that this heart will give you a knowledge of unseen and invisible words. So this is very important. Now Iqbal has used different words, kalandar or fakir. Sometimes he says, fakir. Fakir does not literally mean, the beggar. Now fakir, he uses it in a spiritual sense, means, one who does not depend upon others for his needs. So he says, the spiritual guide is very important to take you to the manzil, to the destination. So this is why, but you have to choose the guide as well. So Iqbal says, that there is no doubt that this physical word is important, no doubt about that. But there is another word, that is not physical one, and it is also very important. Now Iqbal says, that when you go into the depth, it's called khudi. Now khudi means, to know yourself. There is a saying, perhaps that by, not Plato, by Aristotle, Socrates, he says, know thyself. Now, know thyself means, that he, in the words of Iqbal, he paid too much attention to this one, know thyself. And he ignored the word of this plants and this and that, So Iqbal says, so far as Greek philosophy is concerned, mostly they concentrated on the physical world, inner world, And Plato especially, that he says, that this word is not the real word because it is the copy of the other real word, lies beyond it, So this world, the Quran says, Iqbal says, no, this world is the real one. So we have to struggle, we have to make effort, and we have to live nicely in this world. In the words of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he says, that this world, ad-dunya mazratul akhirah. So this world is just like a farm, a field. And you have to sow the seeds there. You have to water it. You have to make effort, and then you will, get the fruit later on. So in the akhirah. So this is why Iqbal says, this world and the next world, they are combined together in the faith of Islam. Now Iqbal says, that the other word is also very important, and we have not to ignore it. If we do not know any seen thing, any visible thing, we cannot deny its fact. We feel sometimes, that we feel pain in any part of our body, We feel it, but we cannot see it. So it does not mean, that every reality must be seen by us. So we also believe in certain things which are invisible to us. So this is why Iqbal says, that the most important thing is when you reach in that world, when you achieve that status, then you know the facts which are not known to other people, So this is called, he said, man ki dunya. Man ki dunya, the world of this matter. The world of a matter, is temporary. It is perishable. But the man ki dunya, the world of this heart, it is not perishable, it is eternal. Because that you come in contact with a supreme being, who is eternal, who is immortal. So this is why he says, that we have not to believe only in this physical world. We should also believe in the other world as well.
Yeah. I think at first he doesn't come out very clearly about the importance of guide in his poetry. It seems that he's giving these ideas and he's just putting them across and saying, do this and do that. Even this qawwali I wanted to play, and the handout you have, the words are, apna muqam paida kar, create your own world. And he means, focusing on your inner life. Create the own world, so and stop focusing on the days and nights of and the routine life you have. So he comes out very many times about suggesting you should do this, you should do that. But he doesn't say how. You see, and this is where the question comes. So how do you want me to create my world? Okay, fine, I'm ready here, and I understand and I agree to your ideas about develop your inner self, but how do I do that? Please tell me. And there is the question, there is the importance of guide. Iqbal himself has actually acknowledged in his poetry, in Persian poetry as well, that he has a guide. And a lot of people, there is a bit of contradiction there, because he claims that he has Jalaluddin Rumi, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, who lived in the 11th century, that he is his guide. He calls him Pir Rumi. He's my spiritual guide, that's what he says. And I mean, from the inner circles of Iqbal, this information has been passed on, that he actually received guidance and inspiration from Rumi, his spirit, Rumi's spirit. I mean, not in the physical world itself, but he received the guidance from Rumi's spirit in spiritual terms. So he has a guide, and that's what he says when he says, look at my poetry, read it, and get inspired from the lamentations I make, and try to awaken your heart. He wants the heart to be awakened. Otherwise, it's dead, and we are dead unless the heart is vibrant and on fire with love of God and with love of our inner reality. Is that all right? Okay.
Sept wants to say something.
Very shortly, my question is also about how to put, as you ask, the ethical ideals into praxis. Or more specifically, how Iqbal's political ideals relate to democracy. Our headline is Democracy and Iqbal, as known in West.
I think she was talking about the inner life.
Yeah, but
if you ask the question about the inner life,
how to realize yourself in what is the political conditions needed to do it.
Iqbal wrote two important books. The one is called Asrar-e-Khudi, Secrets of the Self, and the other is called Ramuz-e-Khudi, Secrets of the Selflessness. Now, Iqbal has very clearly mentioned, that the Muslim of India, he said, that their soul has become dormant. They are, that physically they are alive, but spiritually they are dead. Now, he says, he puts the question over there, and he tells them, okay, first of all, you have to know yourself, because you know that every human being has been endowed with certain faculties by God. So certain people, they have been endowed, Now, that is a sort of trust to us. So we have to use this trust of God according to his commandments. So when we use it, then it will naturally be good for us, for our life. So first of all, he says, he has mentioned 3 stages of self-development. Now, he has given it to different names, self-development, self-knowledge, self-recognition, self-awareness. So all this means, that you have to know yourself. And he says, in order to know yourself, you must meditate, that self-examination. Self-analysis is very important. You must know when you are free from, the busy life, at night, you think, what you are, what is the purpose of your life, and then you will real. But if you are in the mundane affairs, always busy there, it's very difficult for you. So first of all, he says, if you know yourself, if you know the faculties which have been given to you, hidden qualities, potentialities, so you have to develop them, because God has given you those potentialities to develop them. So you have to develop them, and he has given us, he says, first of all, you must obey God, obey Allah, commandments. The second, he says that you must have love for the Holy Prophet ﷺ, because his character, his life has been mentioned in the Holy Quran as model for us. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. He says, there's the best, the Holy Prophet's life is the best model for you. So we have to use that model. And then he says, that a love for Allah and for his Prophet. If we love them, the Creator, so naturally when we love him, he will reward us, he will say, oh, this person, that loves me, he obeys my commandment, and he will, give us that insight, vision, to know certain facts, which go beyond this physical world. So he has given us, this one. Then he also describes, other things, okay, these are the three stages, self-control. So first, obedience to Allah and love of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and self-control. He says, this self-control is very important, because this self, the Quran says, it always, provokes you to do the wrong things, So he says, that you must not suppress it, not crush it, but just, to make it subservient, to the will of God. No, Islam doesn't say you crush yourself, your desires. No, he says, desires are very important, but you have to have, good desires, noble aims and aspiration in your life, and then achieve. Then you have to make struggle. You cannot, simply, leave this world. You have to make progress here, and then you see, play your own part, and you must also conquer the forces of nature. Yeah, go beyond them, beyond this time and space. You will be immortal, and this is why Iqbal says, although if you develop yourself to some extent, it may be possible that you do not die. But actually, physically, the Quran says, kullu nafsin zaikatul maut. Everybody has to taste the love, that taste death. Everybody has to pass through this stage now. So it means, that we die physically, but our remains in the world, we become immortal. Some people, although they are not physically in this world, but actually they are immortal because they are remembered by the people. So in this sense, Iqbal says, although you will die, but you will be remembered by the people, you will achieve immortality. And for that purpose, again he says, that you must create divine attributes in yourself. Takhalluqu bi akhlaqillah means create divine attribute in yourself. God is merciful, you should also be merciful to the people. God is creator, you must also create things, Create your own world, and don't, depend upon the social norm as that, the tradition as such, go beyond them. And then he says, that if your khudi, if your self is developed so much, you can then, that do whatever you like, and God will listen to you. This is the gist of that, And Iqbal says, spiritual guide is there naturally. Since, that we need, the teachers to guide us. Similarly, in the world of spirit, spiritual matters, we also need spiritual guide. Iqbal's spiritual guide was Maulana Rum, and he lived, about 800 or 900 years before that. Iqbal, that I can give you so many examples, that what Rumi said and what Iqbal said. Iqbal put him certain questions. For instance, one question, that put to Rumi, it was, and he says, okay, please tell me whether human beings are, they have got freedom, or they are, they have got no freedom at all. Some people, they believe in determinism, that everything is determined by God, and we can't do anything at all. So this is wrong. The other thing is, that we can do whatever we like. These are two extremes. No, Maulana Rumi, he asked this question to Rumi in the form of a verse, and the Rumi says, he says, look, God has given wings, and the wings, to the crow as well as to the hawk. And God has also given them the freedom of choice and freedom of action to some extent. God has given wings to the crows and to hawks. And the crows, he says, okay, they choose the way, wrong way, they go to the cemetery. They go there because, it is their choice. And the hawks, they go to the king, and, the king, that hold him in his hand. You follow me? So he says, we can do whatever we like. We have got freedom to some extent, and we are also helpless in certain matters. So this is that Iqbal has asked him many questions, and he has given them the answers.
Okay, very short.
Yeah,
comment,
just
yeah.
short. To add to what our guest said, there's one more thing about, you asked about the democracy, you know. So an important thing after the unity of God, oneness of God, belief in that, belief in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and love for him. There's a third thing that you see in Iqbal's poetry is love for fellow human beings. That's where you can put it in. These are three main principles of faith. I mean, you don't leave it there. God and Prophet Muhammad and people, for people, love for human beings and creation. And another point was about controlling self. So Iqbal talks a lot about educating your ego, educating yourself, and what are the things that you should do, what are the things you should not do. So having full control over your life in that way. Thank you.
Difficult part.
Yeah, it is.
In order not to be too hungry, we can take, maybe we can come back to some of these issues later today if necessary. But we will move on to the next contribution by Iram Khawaja, who is a PhD in psychology and postdoc at the Department of